She showed up for a secretary job. But the billionaire CEO asked instead, "Will you marry me?" She showed up with wrinkled clothes, borrowed heels, and a heart full of quiet hope. She was just looking for a job. But when the billionaire CEO looked into her eyes and said, "Will you marry me?" her entire world stopped. She thought it was a joke. He said it was fate. What she didn't know is that this wasn't about love at first sight. It was about a secret he'd been carrying for 5 years, and a truth she had buried even deeper. Before we continue, if you enjoy touching and inspiring stories like this one, make sure to subscribe to the channel and leave a like. Now, let's get back to the story. The elevator doors opened with a soft ding, and Natalie hesitated for a second before stepping out. Her heels, half a size too small, clicked nervously against the marble floor of the 27th floor. She could feel her heart thudding in her chest like it was trying to escape. A bead of sweat trickled down her back. Despite the cold blast of air conditioning, the front desk was sleek, minimalist, silent, just like everything else in this towering glass building that screamed money. She clutched the strap of her oversized purse, her resume poking out slightly from a torn folder. It wasn't her best presentation, but it was the best she could do. The white blouse had been ironed the night before, but the fabric didn't listen well. Her pencil skirt fit a little too snugly, the heels pinched her toes, and her hair, tied quickly in a low ponytail, was already escaping its bounds. Still, she smiled at the receptionist. "I'm here for the secretary position. Natalie Rivera." 10 o'clock. The receptionist, a woman with a headset and a perfect French manicure, looked her up and down briefly, but her voice stayed professional. "Please wait a moment." Natalie nodded, shifting her weight from one foot to another, trying to hide the discomfort in her shoes. She glanced around the floor. Polished walls, designer furniture, framed magazine covers with Nicholas West on the cover. The name echoed in her head like a drumbeat. She knew who he was. Everyone did. Tech billionaire, youngest on the Forbes list. Cold, brilliant, mysterious, never married, never even seen with the same woman twice. The kind of man who lived behind glass walls where people like Natalie only came to polish the floors or serve coffee. She didn't expect to meet him. She expected someone from HR, a clipboard maybe. Instead, the receptionist suddenly stood. "Mr. West would like to see you personally, right this way." Natalie blinked. "Me? Personally?" The woman didn't answer. She was already walking. Natalie followed, her breath shallow. The corridor stretched impossibly long, like one of those dreams where the door never came closer. Then it did. Double glass doors, frosted, the initials NW etched into the surface like a whisper of power. The receptionist opened one side and stepped back. "In here." Natalie walked in, and the moment she did, time slowed. He stood behind a massive oak desk, tall and still. His suit was navy, his tie a muted gray. But what caught her off guard wasn't the wealth. It was the way he looked at her, like he knew her, like he had been waiting. Nicholas West. The same intense blue eyes she had seen on magazine covers, now staring straight into hers. Except this wasn't a photo shoot, and this wasn't scripted. She tried to smile, but her mouth went dry. "Hi, I'm Natalie, for the secretary position." There was a pause. He didn't speak. He just tilted his head slightly and whispered something to the assistant standing beside him. The assistant's eyes widened. Nicholas took one slow step around his desk. His gaze never left hers. Never. Then, softly but clearly, he said, "Will you marry me?" Then, softly but clearly, he said, "Will you marry me?" The air left the room. Natalie's knees almost buckled. She thought maybe she misheard, or that this was a test, some kind of billionaire joke. But no one laughed. The assistant's pen fell from her hand and hit the floor. Even the clock on the wall seemed to stop ticking. Natalie blinked. I'm sorry? What did you just say? Nicholas stepped closer. He was calm, steady. I asked if you would marry me. Silence. Natalie's mouth opened, then closed. This wasn't happening. She clutched her purse tighter. Sir, I think there's a misunderstanding. There's no misunderstanding, he said quietly. I know exactly what I'm doing. His voice wasn't arrogant. It wasn't loud. It was certain. Natalie took a step back. I came here for a job. I know. I've never met you. I know. Then why? He sighed, glancing at his assistant, then back at Natalie. Would you sit down, just for a moment? She hesitated. But something in his eyes wasn't dangerous. It was desperate. She sat. Nicholas sat across from her, folding his hands on the desk. For a second he said nothing. Then, finally, 5 years ago I met someone. Just one night. We barely spoke names. It was brief, but unforgettable. She disappeared before sunrise. I never knew who she really was, but when you walked in just now, for a moment, something in me froze, like I was back there. Natalie froze. Excuse me? I know you're not her, but something about you, your eyes, your voice, brought it all back. I'd given up searching for her. This isn't about the past. It's something else entirely. He shook his head like he was trying to shake off the fog. Natalie was still processing. Wait, are you saying you want to marry me because I remind you of someone else? No. I want to marry you because in that 1 minute you've been standing here, I've felt more than I have in years. I know it sounds insane, but I've built empires on gut instinct, and my instinct right now is screaming that you're meant to be in my life. Natalie stood, her chair scraping the floor. I should go. Natalie, I have rent due in 3 days. My refrigerator is empty. I borrowed these heels from my cousin. I came here hoping for a job, not some rich man's fantasy. I'm not offering a fantasy. I don't even know you. Nicholas stood too, but his voice stayed calm. Then get to know me. Natalie turned, walking to the door, heart racing. Then his voice stopped her. If you walk out, I won't stop you. But if you sit back down, I'll make you a deal. 1 month, stay in my life. Not as a wife, not even as a girlfriend. Just be here. Let me prove what I feel isn't crazy. She stood frozen, hand on the door handle. 1 month, she repeated. 1 month, no strings, you can leave any time. She turned slowly. Why me? He didn't smile. He just whispered, I don't know, but everything in me is telling me you're the one. The room felt like it was holding its breath, and Natalie didn't know why her hand dropped from the door. Natalie sat back down, slowly, like her body moved before her brain could catch up. Her heart was still pounding, her fingers trembled slightly in her lap. Nicholas didn't speak at first. He gave her space, just watching her with that same unreadable look. There was no smirk, no smug satisfaction, just something quieter, like relief. Thank you, he said gently. She shook her head. I haven't agreed to anything. I know, but you didn't leave. That's a start. Natalie exhaled and rubbed her temples. Okay, let's just pretend for a second that this isn't totally insane. What exactly do you want from me? Nicholas leaned forward, resting his elbows on the desk. I want you to spend 1 month with me. We get to know each other. Publicly, yes. People will assume things, but privately, you'll have your space. No pressure, no expectations. Just time. Time for what? She asked. To see if what I feel is real, or if I'm just chasing a ghost. Natalie looked down at her lap. And at the end of the month, you walk away. Or you don't, he shrugged. But it's your choice. Her head was spinning. She looked up. Why not just find the woman from 5 years ago? Nicholas hesitated for the first time. Because I only knew her first name. Emma, no last name, no number. She disappeared before sunrise. I searched for months. Nothing. And then I gave up. He paused, eyes lowering briefly. But I never stopped thinking about her. Natalie swallowed hard. This wasn't what she expected from a billionaire. She expected arrogance, maybe, coldness. But what she saw in Nicholas now was something else. Loneliness. "You still think I might be her?" she asked. "I don't know, probably not, but something about you feels like her, and if you're not, then maybe you're something even better." Natalie's throat tightened. She thought of her apartment, the overdue bills, the phone calls from her landlord, and her little brother Matteo, who still depended on her when their mom couldn't. 1 month with no promises, no strings. "I want some conditions," she said suddenly. Nicholas smiled slightly. "Okay. I keep my own place. I don't stay here or wherever you live, and I come and go as I please." "Done. And I want this in writing, a contract. Nothing romantic unless I say so. No media stunts." Nicholas nodded. "You'll have it this afternoon. My lawyers will make it airtight." Natalie stood smoothing her skirt. "This doesn't mean I trust you." "I'm not asking you to. Just don't run." She didn't answer. She turned and walked to the door. But before she left, she stopped and glanced back at him. "Why was she, Emma, so important to you?" Nicholas's voice was barely above a whisper. "Because when I met her, I was someone else, and for the first time, I felt like I could be human." Natalie's chest tightened unexpectedly. She left before she could say something she didn't mean. By 4 p.m., the contract had arrived at her email. It was real. She forwarded it to a friend in law school just to be sure. The terms were clear: 30 days, no obligations, a stipend for her time, which Nicholas insisted was just compensation for inconvenience. But she knew better. The amount made her blink. $10,000 for 1 month. Natalie stared at the screen. Her rent for the next year could be covered. She could help Matteo with school. She could breathe again. She clicked print. The next morning, a sleek black car waited outside her apartment. It looked so out of place on her street that neighbors peeked through their windows. The driver opened the door for her. "Miss Rivera?" She hesitated, then nodded. "Yeah, that's me." Inside the car, everything smelled like leather and lemon. She sat quietly, holding her purse to her chest. When they arrived, Nicholas was already waiting in the private dining room of a high-rise hotel. No media, just him, in a white shirt with sleeves rolled to his elbows, sipping coffee. "You came," he said, standing as she entered. "You sent a car," she replied, unsure of how to act. He smiled. "Touché." They sat. Breakfast was ordered. The silence wasn't awkward. It was thick with things unsaid. He finally broke it. "Tell me something about you that no one knows." Natalie blinked. "Yeah, what?" "Something real. Not your resume, not your LinkedIn, something you." She thought for a second, then said, "I still sing to my plants." Nicholas raised an eyebrow. "You have plants?" "2, Fernando and Judy, and I sing to them when I water them." Nicholas chuckled softly. "Do they respond?" "They haven't died yet." He nodded. Amused, "I like that." She tilted her head. "Your turn." He leaned back. "When I was 10, I wanted to be a magician, not a tech wizard. A real one. I practiced with decks of cards and coins. I thought I'd grow up and do birthday parties." Natalie's smile surprised even herself. "I can't picture that," she said. "Exactly why I stopped," my father said. It was ridiculous. Her smile faded. She saw something flicker in his eyes then, something unresolved. Before she could ask more, a man in a sharp suit entered the room, the head of PR. He looked flustered. "Nicholas, sorry to interrupt, but a few reporters caught wind of your meeting yesterday. There's already speculation." Nicholas glanced at Natalie. "Let them speculate." The man looked at her, unsure whether to treat her like staff or VIP. "Should we deny it? Or prepare a statement?" Nicholas looked Natalie in the eye. Let her decide. Everyone turned to her. Natalie blinked. "Me?" Nicholas nodded. "You're part of this now. If you want it quiet, it stays quiet. If you want to play the game, we'll play." Natalie looked between them, her stomach twisted. This was real. The decision was hers. Natalie looked between Nicholas and the PR executive, feeling the weight of their eyes on her like a spotlight. Just yesterday she was trying to scrape together enough cash for groceries. Now she was being asked if the world should know she was seen with a billionaire. "I don't want attention," she said finally, her voice calm but firm. "Not yet." Nicholas nodded once. "Then we keep it quiet." The PR man opened his mouth, then closed it again. He clearly wasn't used to taking instructions from guests, but one look from Nicholas was enough to make him retreat with a nod and a quiet, "Understood." Natalie sat back in her chair, the chaos of it all washing over her. She wasn't sure what unsettled her more, the offer, the contract, or how safe she felt next to Nicholas, despite everything about him being unpredictable. He sipped his coffee slowly, then set the cup down. "Thank you." "For what?" she asked. "For trusting me? Even a little." She stared at him for a moment, trying to read the truth in his face. Was this all some calculated act? Or was she sitting across from a man who, despite all his power, just wanted to be seen? She cleared her throat. "So, what happens now? You said a month? How exactly does that work?" Nicholas smiled. "You'll spend time with me, meetings, dinners, some business events, nothing too demanding. I want you to see my world, and I want to see yours." Natalie's brows drew together. "Mine? I don't want to just parade you around in my life. I want to know what makes you who you are." She laughed softly. "My life isn't exactly glamorous. That's what makes it real." She eyed him carefully, unsure if she was being flattered or studied. "So, you just want me to hang around and be your mystery date for the month?" "Only if you want to. I'm not asking you to perform. Just be present." Natalie crossed her arms. "And your team's okay with this arrangement?" He tilted his head, amused. "My team will do what I say." "Must be nice," she muttered under her breath. He grinned. "It's overrated." That afternoon, Nicholas sent her a schedule, not of obligations, but suggestions. 1 business gala, a team dinner, 2 charity functions. Nothing invasive, nothing too fast. Her name wasn't even mentioned publicly. Not yet. But by the next day, her phone buzzed. Unknown number. "You're the girl, aren't you? The one from the tower." Natalie stared at the message, her fingers trembling slightly. She hadn't told anyone yet, only her roommate, Carla. And Carla didn't know anyone at West Tech. The message came again. "Why you?" She blocked the number immediately, heart racing. Her stomach sank with the realization someone had seen her, and they weren't happy about it. Nicholas noticed the tension in her shoulders the next morning when she joined him at a small cafe near the West Tech building. "You okay?" he asked as she stirred her tea. She hesitated, then said, "Someone messaged me. About you. About this." His jaw tightened. "What did they say?" "Just a question." "Oh, why me?" Nicholas leaned forward. "Do you want me to have it traced?" Natalie blinked. "You can do that?" "I can do anything, but only if you want me to." She stared into her cup, then shook her head. "No, I'll just ignore it." "You don't have to." She looked up at him. "I know, but I want to." He studied her for a moment, then nodded. "Okay." There was something about the way he looked at her, not like a man used to being in control, but like someone learning what not being in control felt like. And maybe for the first time, he didn't mind it. That weekend, he invited her to the first official event, a tech fundraiser at a rooftop hotel in Midtown. Natalie stood in front of her tiny closet for almost an hour, trying to figure out what to wear. Nothing fit the scene she imagined. Pearls, glass walls, champagne, and whispers. Carla tossed a silky dark blue dress on her bed. "Wear this. It's simple, elegant, and you don't look like you're trying too hard." Natalie frowned. "Where did this come from? My cousin, she wore it to prom. You'll look great. Natalie slipped into it. It fit like it was meant for her. Nicholas waited for her in the lobby of the hotel, wearing a sleek black suit. But when he saw her step out of the car, his expression shifted. Not in a dramatic, Hollywood kind of way, just quiet awe. "You look beautiful," he said softly. Natalie looked down at her shoes. "Thanks. It's borrowed," he smiled. "Doesn't matter. You still made it yours." The way he said it made her feel warm and a little nervous. Inside, the room buzzed with conversation and soft jazz. Waiters moved like shadows, offering tiny plates with expensive-sounding names. People turned when Nicholas entered, heads nodding, smiles growing wider, hands extending in greeting. Natalie followed quietly beside him, like a shadow. But she didn't go unnoticed. A tall woman with perfect blonde curls and a blood-red dress slid over like she was skating. She barely looked at Natalie. "Nicholas, I heard the rumors were true." Nicholas's smile tightened. "Good evening, Laura." Laura's gaze flicked to Natalie. "And this is Natalie Rivera." Laura's eyes narrowed slightly. "Oh, interesting." Natalie extended a hand. "Hi." Laura shook it. "Barely." "I'm his ex," Natalie blinked. "I mean one of them," Laura added sweetly. "There've been a few." Nicholas exhaled through his nose. "Laura." "It's fine," Natalie said calmly. "Nice to meet you." Laura smiled like a cat. "I'm sure we'll see more of each other." Then she turned and vanished. Nicholas leaned close. "You okay?" Natalie nodded. "Are they all like that?" He chuckled. "Only the dramatic ones." Later, on the balcony overlooking the city, Natalie leaned against the railing, staring at the glittering skyline. Nicholas joined her, handing her a glass of sparkling water. "You handled Laura well. She's not subtle." "She never was." Natalie looked over at him. "Did you love her?" Nicholas looked down at the city. "No. I thought I did. But I was in love with the idea of being seen." "And now?" He met her eyes. "Now I want something real." The air grew still between them. She looked away, nervous. But before either of them could say more, Nicholas's phone buzzed. He read the screen and his face darkened. "What is it?" Natalie asked. He hesitated, then turned the screen toward her. A photo. Her, standing next to Nicholas at the event, smiling. Posted anonymously. Caption, "Who is she?" Natalie's stomach dropped. The secret was out. The photo was already spreading. By the next morning, Natalie's face had been tagged, reposted, cropped, zoomed, filtered, everything. There were articles without facts, blogs speculating wildly, anonymous accounts asking, "Who is she?" while others claimed to have known her for years. Most were just guessing. A few were cruel. Nicholas called early. "You don't have to go online today," he said, his voice soft. "In fact, I'd rather you didn't." Natalie sat on the edge of her bed, her old flannel pajamas still wrinkled from sleep. Her phone buzzed every few seconds with notifications she didn't ask for. Her name, her actual name, was now floating across corners of the internet she'd never visited. "I already saw it," she murmured. He sighed on the other end. "I'm sorry. This wasn't supposed to happen." She wasn't angry. Not exactly. More overwhelmed. "It was going to come out eventually, right?" she said. "That was the whole point, the test month, public appearances and all that." "Yes." "But not like this. Not without your say." She looked around her tiny apartment. Her purse was still on the floor from last night. Carla was in the kitchen, quietly making tea, probably pretending not to hear. "People are digging," Natalie said. "Some of it's true, some of it's not. I think one article said I was a Venezuelan heiress." Nicholas let out a dry chuckle. That would have been easier," she paused. "Is it always like this?" "Not always, but when it happens, it moves fast." Natalie didn't reply right away, her voice lowered. "And if I want it out right now?" Nicholas was silent for a moment, then said, "I'd let you go. I meant what I said, Natalie. No pressure. Oh, no strings." She stared at the wall in front of her, then closed her eyes. "Send a car. I'll be ready in 20 minutes. When she arrived at his penthouse, the doorman greeted her by name. That was new. The elevator opened straight into his private residence, all glass, steel, and open space. But instead of finding Nicholas behind a desk, she found him in the kitchen, barefoot, scrambling eggs. He looked over his shoulder. "Hungry?" She raised an eyebrow. "Are you cooking for me now?" "Trying to earn my keep." Despite everything, she smiled. He plated 2 breakfasts and gestured to the long island. They sat across from each other, the sunlight pouring in through the floor-to-ceiling windows. "I thought you had assistants for this," she said. "I do, but sometimes I like doing things for people myself." Natalie poked at the eggs. "Is this part of the act?" "No," he said simply. "This part is just me." They ate in silence for a few moments. Then she asked the question she hadn't dared ask before. "What exactly do people think I am to you?" That night, after they finished breakfast and she returned home, the quiet felt heavier than usual. Natalie dropped her purse by the door and sank onto the couch. Her fingers traced the edge of her phone absent-mindedly. It buzzed once, unknown number. No message, just a missed call. She stared at it for a long second, the screen glowing faintly in the dim apartment. Then she placed it face down on the table and whispered to herself, "Not tonight." But the unease lingered, curling like smoke at the edge of her piece. Nicholas leaned back. "They don't know yet. Some assume you're my fiancé. Some say you're a hired PR stunt. One article thought you were a new executive from Spain." She raised an eyebrow. "Do I sound Spanish to you?" He smiled. "No, but they're not exactly known for fact-checking." She pushed her plate aside. "So what do we say I am?" He was quiet for a moment. Then, "Whatever you want to be." Her heart skipped. But before she could answer, a voice called from the elevator. "Nicholas, you didn't tell me you had company." Natalie turned. A tall woman in her mid-60s walked in, elegant, commanding, with short silver hair and a firm step. Nicholas stood. "Mother, this is Natalie." Natalie stood quickly, brushing her hands on her skirt. "Hi, it's nice to meet you." His mother eyed her with a curious smile. "The pleasure's mine. I've been hearing whispers." "Nothing's official," Nicholas said quickly. His mother waved a hand. "Since when has that stopped anyone from talking?" She turned to Natalie again. "So, are you in love with him?" The question landed like a stone between them. Natalie's cheeks flushed. "It's complicated." His mother tilted her head, amused. "That's the most honest answer I've heard in this house in years." Nicholas sighed. "Mom, I like her," she said, cutting him off. "She's real. The others all came wearing diamonds and false intentions." Natalie glanced at Nicholas. "The others?" His mother chuckled. "Oh, you'd be surprised how many women suddenly want to save a lonely billionaire." Natalie forced a polite smile, but the words clung to her ribs like thorns. After his mother left, she turned to Nicholas. "Is that what she thinks I am, too? One of the others?" "No," he said firmly. "You didn't chase me. I chased you." She held his gaze. He looked down. "But she's right about one thing." "What's that?" "I've had a long line of people pretending they care about me. Most wanted the power, the name, or the access." "And me?" she asked softly. "You wanted a job," he said with a faint smile, "and you never hid that. It made you the most honest person I've met in years." The truth in his voice made her chest tighten. "I still want a job," she said, though her voice shook. "Then I'll give you one," he said, "but not because I pity you, because you're brilliant. I've read your file, Natalie. You weren't just another name on a list. You have ideas, heart. I want you on my team, not in my arms, unless you want to be there." She looked away, caught between emotion and uncertainty. And then from across the room, his phone buzzed. Nicholas frowned, picking it up. His jaw tightened. "What is it?" Natalie asked. He showed her the screen, a video, her, leaving the hotel from the gala, getting into Nicholas's car, alone, smiling, and in the background, Laura, filming it. The caption was clear. "She's not who he thinks she is." Natalie's heart sank. Why is she doing this? Nicholas's eyes darkened. Because Laura doesn't lose. Nicholas stared at the video for a long moment before locking the screen and setting his phone down like it had personally betrayed him. Natalie could feel the tension rolling off him. He wasn't loud, he wasn't pacing or shouting, but the silence he carried, it was heavy. "She's trying to sabotage you," Natalie said carefully. "No," Nicholas replied without looking at her. "She's trying to sabotage us." Natalie blinked. "There is no us." He looked up. "Not yet," he said, "but she thinks there could be. And she'll do whatever it takes to make sure it doesn't happen." Natalie crossed her arms, suddenly feeling very small in the middle of all this. "I didn't sign up for a war with your exes." "I know." "She's posting about me, filming me. I didn't even notice her." "She's done it before," he said. "To someone else. But that one didn't fight back." Natalie paused. "And what happened to her?" Nicholas's jaw clenched. "She disappeared, changed her number, left the country." Natalie stared. "Are you serious?" He nodded. "She wasn't even dating me. Just a friend I invited to an event. Laura found out. Thought she was a threat. And well, some people don't take being left behind very well." The words chilled her. Natalie paced to the window, pressing her fingers to the glass. Outside the city shimmered, but it felt far away, like a world that no longer belonged to her. "I'm not like her," she whispered. "I know that. I'm not part of this life. These people, the games, the gossip. I'm not built for it, Nicholas." He stood and walked to her side. "You don't have to be. That's the point." She looked at him, her voice raw. "Then why me?" Nicholas exhaled. "I've spent years surrounded by people who play roles. They flatter, they pretend, they take. But when I saw you that day, you didn't try to be anything. You were just you, and it stopped me in my tracks." Natalie didn't answer right away. "I don't know if I can live in your world." "Then don't," he said. "Let me try living in yours." She turned toward him, surprised. And then her phone buzzed. A message. Unknown number again. This time with a link. She clicked before she could stop herself. It was a blog post. Title: Natalie Rivera, Secrets Behind the Smile. A photo from her college days. Another one from her high school Facebook account she hadn't touched in years. A screenshot of her apartment building. Even one of her younger brother, Matteo. Natalie's breath caught. "Oh my God," she whispered. "They found Matteo." Nicholas looked over her shoulder and immediately took the phone. "Give me 5 minutes," he said. He didn't ask. He moved fast, pulling out his own phone. Walking into the hallway, his voice was calm but quick, speaking to someone on the other end. Legal? Security? She wasn't sure. Natalie sank into the couch, hands covering her face. This was real. Her life wasn't private anymore. Later that evening, she returned to her apartment to check on Matteo. Her mom had dropped him off early for the weekend. The 12-year-old was already playing video games with Carla on the couch, oblivious to the storm outside their 4 walls. But when she closed the door behind her, Carla stood up. "I saw it," Carla said gently. "The article." Natalie nodded slowly. "They're coming for everything." Carla bit her lip. "You okay?" "No." "Do you regret saying yes?" Natalie hesitated. Then, finally, "I don't know yet." She walked into the kitchen, poured a glass of water, and stood still, staring at nothing. "I don't want Matteo dragged into this," she said. He didn't ask for any of it." Carla stepped closer. "They're only doing this because they know he cares about you." "I'm not with him," Natalie said suddenly. "Nicholas, I'm just a question mark in his world. Carla looked at her. You like him, though. Natalie's voice faltered. I do. Then don't let people like her make you run. Natalie swallowed the lump in her throat. Easier said than done. The next day, Nicholas showed up at her apartment building in person. He wasn't in a suit this time, just jeans, a navy sweater, and sneakers. I had my team pull down the article, he said without greeting. The blogger was paid, and not by me. Let me guess, Natalie muttered. Laura, he nodded. Probably. But she used a fake account, so we're still tracing it. They stood quietly in the hallway, her apartment door still half open behind her. Is Mateo okay? He asked gently. Yeah, he doesn't know yet. I'll tell him if it gets worse. I'll make sure it doesn't. She crossed her arms. You keep saying that, but you can't control what people do. No, he said, but I can control how we fight back. Natalie met his eyes. So what's your plan? Nicholas paused. Make this real. Natalie blinked. What? Publicly. Make this real. No more mystery. No more silence. We tell our story before someone else tells it for us. She felt like she was spinning again. You mean, like, admit we're together? He took a slow step forward. If you want to be. Yes. Her heart raced. This started as a business deal, she whispered. I know, but it's not one anymore. She stared at him. He took another step, closer now, his voice softer. Natalie, if you're scared, I'll slow down. But if there's even a part of you that feels what I feel, let's not let someone like Laura write our ending. Her mouth opened, but before she could speak, the elevator at the end of the hall dinged, and out walked a tall man in a gray suit, clean-cut, sharp-eyed. He looked right at Natalie. You Natalie Rivera? She stepped forward cautiously. Yes. Why? The man held up a badge. Detective Jameson, we need to talk about a report filed against you this morning. Nicholas stepped protectively in front of her. Filed by who? The detective's lips tightened. An anonymous tip. Allegations of fraud and identity manipulation. Natalie's breath caught. What? That's not true. Nicholas turned to her, then back to the detective. She's coming with me, the man said, just for questioning. Natalie stepped back, panic rising. Nicholas's voice was cold now, controlled. She's not going anywhere without a lawyer. Jameson held up a hand. She's not under arrest. This is just questioning. But I have an official tip from an internal source with documents attached. Enough to raise suspicion. If she refuses, we'll escalate with a warrant request. Nicholas narrowed his eyes. Internal source? Jameson hesitated. Anonymous, but high level, powerful. Someone who doesn't want this buried. He glanced at Nicholas, then added, Word is, she used to be involved with one of your board members. That might explain the access. Natalie's blood went cold. She already knew who it was. The hallway spun. Carla appeared in the doorway, eyes wide. Nicholas looked at Natalie. Do you trust me? She nodded, barely. Then let's fight this, together. The interrogation room was smaller than Natalie expected. Not dark or cold like in the movies, just clinical. Gray walls, flickering overhead light, and a table with metal legs that rattled if you touched it the wrong way. She sat across from Detective Jameson, hands folded tightly in her lap. Her throat was dry, her breath shallow. Nicholas was in the waiting area with his lawyer, a sharp-eyed woman named Felicia Monroe, who walked in with such authority even the officers stood straighter. Let me do the talking, Felicia had whispered before they walked in. You just breathe. Now, inside the room, Felicia sat beside Natalie, flipping through the file Jameson had placed on the table. Anonymous tip, she said aloud. No name, no formal accusation, no evidence of wrongdoing, and yet you pulled her from her home and dragged her in for questioning? Jameson leaned forward, hands clasped. The tip was specific, claimed she manipulated her identity to access privileged information from West Tech, that she used false pretenses To gain financial benefit. Felicia's brow arched. Do you even hear how vague that sounds? Jameson didn't flinch. I'm not accusing. I'm asking. Ms. Rivera, how long have you known Nicholas West? Natalie hesitated. Felicia placed a calming hand on hers. You don't need to answer that. No, it's fine, Natalie said softly. A few days. We met during a job interview. Jameson leaned back. And he offered you what exactly? A contract, she said. 1 month, no strings, just to be around. He wanted to see if what he felt was real. The detective's eyebrows lifted. Sounds a lot like a paid relationship. Natalie sat up straighter. It's not. I came in for a job, not to be anyone's fantasy. Jameson didn't react. Just scribbled something in his notepad. Have you ever lied to him? Hidden anything about your past? Natalie flinched. Felicia stepped in. This is over, the lawyer said sharply. Unless you have a warrant or charges, we're leaving. Jameson nodded slowly. You're free to go. For now. Nicholas stood the moment they walked out. His jaw tightened when he saw Natalie's face, pale, shaken. He didn't say anything. He just opened his arms, and she walked straight into them. For the first time, he held her like he was trying to anchor her in place, his hand gently pressing the back of her head, her face buried against his chest. I'm sorry, he whispered. I should have seen this coming. She didn't cry, but her throat burned. They think I'm scamming you. They can think whatever they want, he said. But I know the truth. She pulled back slightly. Do you? He met her eyes, serious now. I do. Her gaze searched his face, as if trying to find the part of him that still doubted her. But it wasn't there. That night he took her to his private house just outside the city. Away from flashing cameras, away from whispered gossip, no staff, no assistants, just the sound of trees outside the window and a fire crackling in the living room. Natalie sat on the couch, wrapped in a blanket, staring into the flames. Nicholas handed her tea and sat beside her. She was quiet for a long time. Then, what happens if they keep digging? He didn't ask who she meant. The press, the police, or Laura. It didn't matter anymore. They were all circling. They won't find anything, he said. Because there's nothing to find, she glanced at him. Not true, he frowned. What do you mean? Natalie hesitated. I haven't told you everything. Nicholas set his cup down slowly. I wasn't always steady. After college, I dropped off the map for almost a year. No job, no plan. I was taking care of my mom after she got sick. I moved from place to place, lived in a borrowed trailer for a while. My credit tanked. I missed some deadlines, skipped some interviews. I wasn't proud of who I was during that time. Nicholas was silent. Natalie continued. And I know people could twist that. Make it sound like I was unstable or hiding something, but I wasn't. I just survived. When she looked up, Nicholas's eyes were softer than ever. You don't owe me perfection, he said quietly. You owe me honesty, and you've given that. She let out a breath she didn't realize she was holding. Why are you being so kind to me? She asked, voice barely above a whisper. He smiled faintly. Because you haven't asked me for anything. And yet, you're giving me more than most ever have. She looked at him for a long second, and then, softly, it feels like I'm standing on something that could vanish any second. So am I, she blinked. You? He nodded. You make me feel things I haven't let myself feel in a long time, and when you're used to control, feeling is the scariest part. She leaned her head against his shoulder, and they sat like that, quiet, close, uncertain, but together. 2 days passed, the blog posts died down. The detective didn't come back. But the silence wasn't comforting. It felt like a storm was still gathering somewhere just beyond the horizon. Then, late one night, Nicholas got a call. He didn't answer at first. But when it rang again, same number, he stepped onto the balcony and picked up. Natalie watched him from inside. His expression shifted quickly. From confusion to disbelief, to something colder. When he hung up, he turned to her slowly. "What is it?" she asked. His voice was low. "That was someone from a private investigator I hired weeks ago, long before you." Natalie's stomach dropped. "Why?" "I wanted to find her. Emma." The name still echoed when he said it. "That one-night mystery woman who started all of this." "And?" Natalie asked, voice tight. Nicholas swallowed hard. "They think they found her." Natalie didn't move. "She's married now," he said. "Lives in Oregon. Not you, not even close." Natalie felt something strange move in her chest. Not jealousy. Not even relief. Just the truth. "So now you know," she said quietly. "She's not me." Nicholas stepped forward, his eyes never leaving hers. "I think I knew that all along." Her voice trembled. "Then why did you ask me to stay?" He reached for her hand. "Because when I met her, I felt a spark. But when I met you, I felt like I found a place to land." He paused, then added, almost to himself, "And no, you're not her. I knew that the moment you started talking, but somehow it didn't matter. You made me feel something real." Natalie's eyes flickered with surprise, but before she could answer, Nicholas's phone buzzed again. This time it was a name. Laura. He answered reluctantly. Natalie watched the color drain from his face. He hung up, eyes wide. "She's threatening to go to the media with something personal." Natalie stiffened. "About me?" "No," he said, his voice hollow. "About me." Nicholas stared at the floor like it might give him the words he couldn't yet find. Natalie stood a few feet away, arms folded, heart pounding. She hadn't seen him like this. Not even after the video, the blog post, the detective. This was different. "What kind of personal?" she asked carefully. Nicholas finally looked at her. "The kind that could end everything I've built." He didn't say it with drama. It wasn't a threat or a performance. It was quiet, matter of fact, like someone describing a storm they knew they couldn't outrun. Natalie's throat tightened. "I'm still standing here," she said. "But if you want me to keep standing here, you need to tell me the truth." He nodded slowly, then walked past her, grabbing a key from a drawer and unlocking a narrow door beside his office bookshelf. Natalie had assumed it was a storage closet. It wasn't. She followed him down a short staircase into a space she never knew existed, a private study. Warm lighting, old books, a single photograph in a silver frame on the desk. A boy, maybe 9. Messy blonde hair, eyes just like Nicholas's. He picked up the frame. "This is Ryan," he said softly. "My younger brother." Natalie stepped closer. "I didn't know you had a brother." "I don't," he said. "Not anymore." She looked at the picture again. "What happened?" Nicholas set the frame down. 6 years ago he was in college. Bright, stubborn, funny. He wanted nothing to do with tech or the West name. He wanted to be a teacher. He swallowed. "I was pushing hard then, expanding the company, dealing with investors. I didn't see it." But he was struggling. Natalie's heart began to ache before he even finished. "One night he sent me a message. I didn't read it. I was in Tokyo. I thought, I'll get to it later." A week later, he was gone. Silence. Nicholas's voice was barely a whisper now. "It wasn't an accident. He left a letter. Told me he felt invisible. That the world I lived in, the speed, the pressure, the image, didn't leave space for him." Natalie didn't know what to say. Her chest burned. "I never forgave myself," he said. "And the media never knew. We paid to keep it quiet. Ryan didn't want to be famous, so we buried his story with him." He turned to her now, eyes red but unflinching. "Laura found out about Ryan. She's threatening to tell the press. She says the public deserves to know I buried my own brother's death." Natalie took a shaky step toward him. "She's trying to turn your grief into a headline." Nicholas nodded. "She's done it before. But this time, it's different." "Why?" "Because this time, I have something to lose." He looked at her. Not like the billionaire CEO, not like the calculated man who made deals with lawyers. Just Nicholas, a broken older brother, a man who still carried guilt in his bones. "You think if people find out, they'll hate you?" Natalie asked softly. "I don't care if they hate me," he said. "I care if you do." Her breath caught. "I don't," she whispered. "I never could." He stepped forward, hesitant. "Even if I pulled you into this without telling you everything?" "You told me what mattered," she said, "when it mattered most." She reached for his hand. He didn't pull away. They stood in silence for a moment, just breathing. Just being. The tension didn't disappear, but something shifted. The ground between them had finally leveled. The next day, Nicholas called a press conference. Natalie didn't ask him to. He made the decision on his own. Not to protect the company, not to silence Laura, but to take back the story before someone else twisted it. He stood in front of a dozen cameras, reporters buzzing like flies, waiting for a scandal. He wore no tie, no script, no prepared talking points, just his truth. "I'm not here to defend myself," he said. "I'm here to tell the truth about someone I love." Natalie watched from the side of the room, her heart in her throat. He told them about Ryan, not every detail, but enough. Enough to make the room fall silent, enough to turn pens into stillness, enough to shift the narrative from mystery to human. And then, near the end, he said something that made her breath catch. "I built this company from the ground up, but the one thing I never built was a life. Not until recently." He paused. "There's someone in my life now, someone who reminded me that connection matters more than control, that kindness is more powerful than image." The reporters leaned in. He didn't name her. He didn't have to. That night, they returned to the penthouse together. No words. Just quiet music, warm food, and the sound of the city humming below. Nicholas sat beside her on the couch, running his fingers along the edge of his glass, thinking. "You didn't have to stand by me," he said. "Not after all that." Natalie leaned against his arm. "I wasn't standing by the CEO," she said. "I was standing by the man who made me feel seen when no one else did." He smiled faintly, and then, for the first time, slowly, carefully, he kissed her. It wasn't rushed. It wasn't dramatic. It was real, honest, like the first page of something neither of them had dared write before. Later, when the city had quieted and the world had stopped spinning, Natalie stood on the balcony alone, looking out over the skyline. The wind tugged at her hair. Nicholas joined her, slipping a jacket around her shoulders. "You still thinking of leaving?" he asked gently. She turned to him. "I don't want the headlines," she said. "I don't want the cameras or the rumors or the politics. But," she smiled, "I want you." He reached for her hand. "I'm not going anywhere," he said. And this time, she believed him. But just as they turned back toward the warmth inside, Natalie's phone buzzed again. One message, no name, just 3 words. "You lied, Natalie." She froze. Nicholas saw her face. "What is it?" She handed him the phone, heart hammering, because whoever sent it knew something she hadn't shared yet, not even with him. Nicholas read the message twice, then looked up at her. His expression didn't shift. Not yet. But the stillness in his body was louder than any words. "You lied, Natalie," he read aloud. "What's it talking about?" Natalie's mouth opened, but the words didn't come. Her mind scrambled, flipping through her past like pages in a book she didn't want anyone else to read. Nicholas gently handed the phone back. "Is there something I should know?" She swallowed hard. "There's something I didn't tell you," she said, voice low, "but I didn't think it mattered." Nicholas didn't press. He waited, and that made it harder. She walked back into the living room, trying to breathe. "When I said I had no connection to you, that wasn't entirely true," she admitted. "Not in the way you thought." "But still," he followed slowly. "Go on." Natalie sat on the edge of the couch, hands shaking slightly in her lap. "It was 5 years ago," she said. "I was 22, just out of college, broke, scared. I needed something, anything, to believe in." She looked up. I saw you speak at a university seminar. You were a guest speaker. Everyone else asked questions about coding, business models, market strategies, but I asked you about loneliness." Nicholas blinked. "That was you?" She nodded. "That wasn't the same night as her. I know that. But still, that moment changed something in me. You said something that stuck with me. You said, 'No one at the top is ever as strong as they look. They're just the ones who hide it best.'" His mouth parted slightly, like he was chasing a memory just out of reach. "You wore a red scarf," he said quietly. Natalie looked up in surprise. "How do you remember that?" "I don't forget people who ask real questions," he said. "Especially not ones like that." Her throat tightened. "I never approached you after. I left before the crowd could even thin out. But from that moment, I started following your work, quietly, just watching from a distance. You were this symbol, I guess, of what was possible, of what strength could look like." She paused. "And when my mom got sick, when things got bad, I used your interviews like oxygen. I know it sounds silly, but hearing your voice made me feel like things might get better." Nicholas sat down beside her, stunned. "So when I walked into that interview, I knew who you were. I just didn't think it counted as lying." He was quiet for a long time. Finally, he said, "That wasn't lying. That was surviving." "But I let you believe I was a complete stranger," she whispered. "And when you asked if I was the girl from 5 years ago, Emma, for a second, I wanted it to be true. I wanted to be that girl, even if just to mean something to someone like you." Nicholas stared at her. His voice was gentle. "You already did." Natalie looked up sharply. He continued, "That girl I met that night? She vanished, left without a trace. She made me feel, but she didn't stay." He touched her hand. "You stayed." Tears pricked the corners of Natalie's eyes. "I was afraid if you knew I had followed your work, you'd think I was one of those people. Someone chasing the brand, not the person." He shook his head slowly. "I've had 1,000 people chase the brand. But you? You walked in with borrowed heels, wrinkled clothes, and told me you needed a job." She let out a half laugh through her tears. Nicholas leaned forward. "I don't care where we started, Natalie. I care where we're going." She nodded, her heart so full it almost hurt. Then he added, "But I need you to promise me something." "Anything," she said softly. "No more hiding, not even the small stuff." "I promise," she whispered. He smiled and kissed her forehead. Kissed. But before the warmth of that moment could settle, her phone buzzed again. Another message. This one had a photo attached. Nicholas's voice tensed. "What is it now?" Natalie clicked it open. Her body went cold. The photo was from 3 years ago. A blurry shot of her standing in the lobby of a courthouse, holding hands with someone, a man, Aiden. And beneath the photo, just 2 words, "Explain this." Nicholas saw her face go pale. "Who is he?" Natalie slowly sat back down. "My ex," she said, "but it's more complicated than that." Nicholas's silence was different this time, not angry, but careful. She sighed. "His name is Aiden. We met during a really rough patch. He was good at pretending, said all the right things, promised stability, love, safety." Nicholas listened. "But after a few months it started to fall apart. The charm cracked. He had control issues, emotional manipulation, the kind that makes you think you're the crazy one. I didn't even tell Carla." Nicholas's fists clenched. "I left, quietly. No lawyers, no papers, just left. And when I changed cities, I changed my number, deleted everything, started over." Tears slipped down her cheek. "I was never legally married, but people thought we were. I let them. It was easier than explaining the truth." Nicholas exhaled, visibly trying to stay calm. "Does he know where you are now?" "I don't think so, until now." Nicholas stood. "I'm going to fix this." Nicholas, "I don't care about your past," he said firmly. But if he's coming after you, even from a distance, I need to make sure he can't touch you again." Natalie stood too. "I don't want to drag you into it." "You didn't drag me," he said, stepping close. "I chose to be here." She looked up at him. "Are you sure?" He nodded once. "You're not alone anymore." But as they stood there, holding each other tighter than they ever had, Natalie's mind raced with one question. If Aidan had found her once, could he do it again? The air in Nicholas's penthouse felt heavier that night. Even with the city buzzing below, it was like the world had gone quiet, just long enough to listen. Natalie stood at the window, arms wrapped tightly around herself, watching headlights blur down the avenue. She hadn't slept since the second message. She couldn't. Behind her, Nicholas was on the phone with someone from his security team. Calm, direct, but firm. "No, I don't care if it's a dead trail. I want every known alias, every address, every email. If this man so much as steps foot near her building again, I want to know before he blinks." Natalie flinched slightly at the intensity in his voice, but part of her was grateful. No one had ever fought for her like this before. When he hung up, she turned. "What if this gets worse?" she asked quietly. "What if Aidan tries to contact my family, Mateo, my mom?" Nicholas walked over to her. "I've already assigned someone to keep eyes on them, discreet. No one will get close without us knowing." Natalie hesitated. "You really didn't have to go that far." "I did," he said. "Because this isn't just your fight anymore. It's ours." She wanted to believe him, every word, but inside her chest, doubt still scratched at the walls. "I should have told you about Aidan from the start," she said. "I just wanted to be someone new, someone not tied to all that brokenness." Nicholas brushed a strand of hair behind her ear. "We're all a little broken, Natalie. The difference is you kept going." She looked at him, eyes wide and wet. "You really believe that?" "I believe in you," he said softly. "That hasn't changed." But things did change. Quickly. The following day, an envelope arrived at Natalie's apartment, no return address. Carla found it and called her immediately. "There's no name, just a printed note inside." Natalie felt her stomach twist. "What does it say?" Carla read it aloud. "You don't deserve him. You don't deserve peace. You know what you did." Natalie sat down, her knees weak. Nicholas was already dialing. "Someone's playing a psychological game," he said after the call. "They want you scared, isolated. They're trying to shake your foundation." "Well, it's working," she whispered. He knelt beside her. "Then lean on mine." That night, Nicholas held a private meeting with a man named Curtis, his personal investigator. Curtis was sharp-eyed and calm, the kind of man who had been in dangerous rooms and walked out without a scratch. "I found him," Curtis said, laying down a manila folder. "Aidan Chase, current alias Adrian Cole. He moved cities 3 times in the last 2 years. Last known job, freelance event consultant." Nicholas flipped through the pages, photos, flight logs, a few dated texts. Natalie froze when she saw one of the photos. That's him. He hasn't changed." Curtis nodded. "He's smart, careful, keeps things off the books, but he slipped once. 3 weeks ago he tried to access an encrypted social database. Not yours, Nicholas's." Nicholas's eyes narrowed. "Why would he?" "He was trying to get information on people close to you. Probably looking for an angle." Natalie felt her chest tighten. "Why now? Why after all this time?" Curtis closed the file. "Because for some men like him, silence isn't peace, it's punishment. And the moment he saw her with you, Nicholas, it wasn't about her anymore. It became a game of control." Nicholas was already moving. "I want a restraining order filed and press charges for harassment if we have legal grounds." Curtis nodded. "We'll get it started tonight." Natalie watched Nicholas. How his hands moved fast, how his voice was steady, even when his eyes burned. "You're risking your reputation for me," she said. He looked over. "You think I care about my reputation more than you?" "I don't think I'm worth all this trouble," she whispered. He crossed the room to her and cupped her face in both hands. "Then I guess I'll just have to keep proving you are." The next morning brought an unexpected turn. Nicholas was scheduled to speak at a charity gala that evening. A quiet event, black tie, no media frenzy. Natalie wasn't planning to go, not after everything. She didn't have the strength for cameras or whispered judgment. But that morning, a package was delivered to the penthouse. Inside it, a dress. Deep green. Elegant, simple, her size. No note, just a card with a time. 7:30 p.m. She looked at Nicholas, confused. "I didn't send it," he said, "but I think someone wants you to be seen." He smiled gently. "So do I." The gala was quiet, tasteful, a gathering of thinkers and donors, not influencers or paparazzi. But as soon as Natalie entered the room on Nicholas's arm, heads turned, some whispered, some smiled politely, some judged silently. But she kept walking by his side. He introduced her to no one as his secretary or his friend. He said her name with calm, certain pride, and every time someone tried to corner him privately, he looped back to her. He wanted the world to see her, just as she was. But just when things felt steady again, Natalie stepped away to freshen up and found something slipped under the door of the women's lounge. Another note, this one, handwritten. "Tell him what you did, or I will." No name, just the same signature at the bottom, AC. Her stomach dropped. She gripped the sink, breath shaking. Nicholas had accepted her truth, her past, even her silence. But she had one more secret. One she hadn't said aloud to anyone, one even Carla didn't know. She stared at herself in the mirror and whispered to her reflection, "Maybe I don't deserve him." Back at the gala, Nicholas was talking with a board member when he noticed her across the room, pale, shaking, eyes locked on his. She walked straight toward him, and in a voice just loud enough for only him to hear, "I need to tell you something I should have said a long time ago." Nicholas's expression shifted instantly. He knew this wasn't small, and it wasn't over. Nicholas didn't ask her to wait. He didn't say, "Let's talk later," or "not here." When Natalie said she needed to talk, really talk, he simply reached for her hand and led her away. They moved down a long hallway behind the gala's main ballroom, away from the crystal chandeliers and polished conversation. He opened a door to a small service lounge, empty, quiet, dim. He didn't speak first. Natalie stood in the center of the room, hands trembling. She had rehearsed this moment in her mind 1,000 times. But now, staring at him, someone who had given her his trust, his protection, even his heart, every word felt heavier. "There's something I left out," she began, her voice barely above a whisper. "Something I buried because I thought I had to, not just from you, from everyone." Nicholas didn't interrupt. He didn't even blink. She looked down at her hands. 3 years ago, after I left Aiden, after I disappeared from his life, he filed something. Nicholas's brow furrowed slightly. "He accused me of theft," she continued, "claimed I'd stolen money from a joint account, which wasn't true. The money was mine. I had deposited it there months before. But I didn't have a lawyer, and I was scared, and I didn't fight it the right way." She paused, then added, "He dropped the charge before it went to court, but there's still a record. Not a conviction, just a shadow. It shows up in some background checks. Even though nothing came of it, it makes me look like a risk." Her voice wavered. "That's what I was afraid Laura would use." Nicholas's jaw tightened. "And I thought," she whispered, "if you found out, you'd think I used you too." He walked closer, slowly. "And that's what the note meant?" he asked. "That you lied because of that?" She nodded. "It wasn't about hiding the past. It was about hiding who I was in the past. Weak, ashamed, angry. And I didn't want that version of me anywhere near the version I'm trying to become." Nicholas was quiet. Then, "You think you were weak for surviving something no one should have had to?" She met his eyes. "No," he said firmly, "that's not weakness. That's war, and you walked out still standing." Natalie blinked, not trusting her own breath. "None of this changes how I see you," he added. "In fact, it explains a lot. The silence, the guardedness, the fear." He stepped even closer. "I see you now, Natalie, the whole picture, and I still choose you." She closed her eyes for a second, as if letting the words settle. She had been carrying that secret for so long, it had nearly calcified into her spine. Now it was out, and she wasn't being pushed away. She was being held. Nicholas gently touched her cheek. "What else is he capable of?" Her voice broke a little. "He doesn't let go. He doesn't like losing, and now that he knows where I am—" "He won't get near you again," Nicholas said. "I'll make sure of it." Natalie nodded. She believed him, but she also knew people like Aiden didn't stop just because they were warned. They stopped when they were forced to. Back at the penthouse later that night, Nicholas made a decision. "I'm not going to wait for him to make another move," he said. "I want to go public, everything, not just us, but what he's doing, what he's trying." Natalie's eyes widened. "Won't that make things worse?" "Maybe," Nicholas said. "But right now he's hiding in the dark, playing games. If we bring him into the light, he loses control." Curtis, Nicholas's private investigator, agreed. Men like Aiden thrive on silence, shame, fear, but expose their tactics, and suddenly they're just cowards with a spotlight on them. So the next morning, Nicholas called a press conference. Natalie didn't plan to speak, but when the cameras turned on and she saw the same faces who had once whispered, speculated, judged, she stepped forward. "My name is Natalie Rivera," she said, her voice clear, even if her hands trembled slightly behind the podium. "Some of you know me as a headline." A question mark? A rumor? She looked directly into the cameras. "But I'm not a story someone else gets to tell, so here's the truth. I was in a relationship that became toxic. I walked away, I rebuilt, and I've kept rebuilding, piece by piece." Nicholas stood just behind her, quiet, steady, present. "I was never looking for a billionaire," she said. "I was looking for peace, and I found someone who didn't just offer it, he fought for it." Reporters asked questions, some fair, some invasive. But Natalie didn't shrink, and by the end, something changed. Not in the room, in her. That night, Nicholas sat with her on the balcony, city lights flickering like quiet applause below. "You were incredible today," he said, sipping his tea. "I was terrified." "That's what made it brave," she smiled faintly. "I didn't know I had it in me." "You've had it all along," he replied. She looked at him for a moment, then asked something she hadn't yet. "Do you ever wish you'd waited? That you'd let me apply for the job normally, go through HR, submit my resume, sit through a boring interview, instead of jumping into all this?" Nicholas laughed softly. "Not even a little." "Why?" He leaned in. "Because the moment I saw you, I knew something was about to change. I didn't know what. I didn't even care what. I just knew." She smiled. "That sounds dangerously close to fate." "I don't believe in fate," he said. "But you believe in me?" He nodded. "With everything I've got." And just as they leaned in again, her phone buzzed. One more time, Natalie sighed. "What now?" But this time it wasn't a threat. It was a single text from a blocked number. "I give up. You win." She stared at the message. Nicholas leaned in to read it, then looked at her. "You think it's real?" She looked out over the city. "I don't know, but I think I'm finally not scared to find out." 3 months later, spring crept into the city quietly. No grand announcements, no dramatic changes, just soft breezes and blooming corners that reminded everyone that life moves forward, whether you're ready or not. Natalie stood by the open window of Nicholas's kitchen, barefoot, sipping coffee from a chipped mug, she refused to replace. It was the only thing she'd insisted on bringing from her old apartment. Something real, something hers. Nicholas walked in behind her, shirt sleeves rolled up, his tie slung over one shoulder. "Board meeting in 20, he said. But I'm tempted to skip it." She smiled without turning around. "You say that before every board meeting." "That's because they never serve decent coffee. You own the building. Which means I have the right to complain louder than anyone." Natalie laughed and finally turned. His eyes softened when they met hers. Even after everything, the headlines, the messages, the tension that once felt endless, this was what remained. Peace, real peace. And it wasn't made of quiet rooms or perfect days. It was built from honesty, trust, and the decision to stay, even when leaving would have been easier. 2 weeks earlier, they'd received final confirmation from Curtis. Aiden had left the state. No more messages, no more threats. He had closed every account under the alias AC and disappeared. The final message had been his version of surrender. Natalie didn't reply. She didn't need to, because by then her silence wasn't fear. It was freedom. Later that day, Natalie met with the HR department at West Tech, not as the CEO's guest, not as his girlfriend, but as a candidate. For real this time. She had spent the last few weeks preparing quietly, rereading old textbooks, studying the company inside and out. She didn't want favors. She wanted to earn her place. When the hiring director, Lila Cho, looked over her file, she raised an eyebrow. "You do realize," she said, "we've never had a romantic scandal to executive track policy." Natalie grinned. "Guess I'll be your first." Lila smiled. "Well, we have been needing someone with fresh perspective." The interview was real. The questions were tough, and when the call came the next day, offering her a project management role in the community outreach division, she cried on the bathroom floor with happiness. Not because Nicholas had given it to her, because he hadn't. She had done this one on her own, one night after a particularly long workday. Nicholas came home to find the lights dimmed and a note on the table. "Come to the rooftop." He followed the instructions, slightly confused. But the moment he stepped out into the warm evening air, he froze. Natalie stood in the center of the rooftop garden he had once built, but rarely visited. Surrounded by soft lanterns and tiny white flowers, there were no cameras, no press, no headlines, just her, and 2 mugs of cocoa. He approached, smiling. "What's all this?" "I wanted to say thank you," she said. "For what?" "For seeing me before I saw myself," he blinked. She held out one of the mugs. "You helped me believe I deserved more than survival. You gave me space to stop running." He took the cocoa and sat beside her on the wooden bench. "And you helped me stop hiding behind suits and numbers," he said. "You brought me back to life, too." She leaned against him. They sat in silence, watching the skyline glow in the distance. Then Natalie whispered, "You know, people keep asking if we're getting married." Nicholas raised an eyebrow. "Are we?" She smirked. "I don't know, but I do know this. I don't need a ring or a headline to prove what we are." He nodded, understanding. "Still," he said, "you might want to check your cocoa." She frowned. "Check my—" He pointed to the bottom of the mug, and there, taped inside, was a small silver key. She looked up, confused. Nicholas shrugged. "To the house in the Catskills, the one I never use. I had it renovated. Figured it was time to stop waiting for the perfect moment." Natalie stared at the key, then at him. "You're giving me a house." "I'm giving you a place to call home, a place where no one chases you, questions you, or breaks you, where you can write, think, grow, or just rest." She covered her mouth, tears threatening to fall. "I've never had that before." "Now you do." In the following weeks, Natalie settled into her new role. The team respected her, not because she was with the CEO, but because she listened, worked hard, and didn't pretend to have all the answers. She started a small outreach program for women recovering from toxic relationships, her quiet way of giving back what she'd once needed. Nicholas never missed a single event. He stood quietly in the back. No cameras, no speeches, just presence. And even though their relationship stayed private, those who mattered noticed. The way he looked at her, the way she stood taller when he was near. Carla always arrived early and stayed late. Handing out flyers and fixing tangled cords, her proud smirk saying everything. They weren't playing games. They were building something real. 1 year later, on a calm Saturday morning in the Catskills, Natalie opened her laptop to write. She wasn't working on emails or resumes. She was writing her story. Not the tabloid version, not the rumors. Her truth. About strength, about fear, about love that didn't fix you, but stood beside you while you fixed yourself. Nicholas walked in with coffee and kissed her cheek. "You writing?" she smiled. "Finally." He read the title over her shoulder, The CEO's Proposal. "Not a fairy tale, just a real love story," he chuckled. "That sounds familiar." She looked up. "Do you regret it? The way it all started?" He leaned down and whispered, "If I had to do it all again, ask you that same impossible question on day one, I still would." She kissed him softly, not because it was the ending, but because finally it was the beginning, the end. "Now tell me, if someone offered you a second chance at love, no echo, no guarantees, just honesty, would you take it or walk away?" Drop your answer in the comments. Your story might touch more hearts than you think. And while you're here, how would you rate this story from 1 to 10? Be honest. Your feedback helps shape the next ones. If this story moved you, give it a like. It lets me know you want more like this. And if you're not subscribed yet, now's the perfect time.